Hey guys, it's Julian, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a Chris Stussy and Djoko style full track. I'm going to be talking to you about the whole arrangement, how to make the style of track work, not just for an 8-bar loop, but actually how to make it work in a full track over time and how all that works, as well as breaking down each individual element that you just heard in the intro. As usual, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from the full track is available at the top of the description. You can also hear the full 7-minute track arrangement at the top of the description. And yeah, let's dive in. So, the first thing that we have going on up here would be these pads. So, there's two chords being played here. We have this one, which you can hear is a bit higher, and then this one, which is just in there giving kind of like the body of the sound. And when you put them together, you get a full sounding pad, but it's important to keep that in because, this like very bright high one sounds really good. But if you just have that in the mix, it's really missing that lower one. So you gotta keep that in mind. And something you'll also see is that the low one is just playing a basic C# minor chord. That's the key that we're in. Yeah, you can see just C# minor there. But then the higher one, you can see it plays that same C# minor, but it's a bit deeper because you can see like we've taken the minor third and put it up an octave. We have another fifth here. We have this B here, which would be the minor seventh, another C#. We have a fourth and then a fifth up here. So we're adding different notes from the C# minor scale to kind of make this chord a bit more full and just a bit more exciting. And this is important, like if you just use, like if both of these are just playing a minor chord, it's going to be a bit flat. But if you can do like a minor chord and then add these extra voices on top, that's essentially what's going to give this its character. Because if I turn this off, just having the C# minor chord, not quite as exciting. And for the first one, it's made using Operator. It's just these 3 sine waves, all at different octaves, creating this kind of interesting waveform. And then you can see we have a lot of automation here with this filter frequency. So it's constantly moving. That's also happening with the second pad. And yeah, that's important. With this track, if you just have the pad sit in one place in terms of the filter frequency, it's going to be a bit too flat. Like, it's just going to feel like why are we repeating this? We've already heard it. But if you have it constantly opening and closing and building like this, it's a lot more dynamic, so it's going to make the sound feel a lot more exciting and a lot more alive. And then we just have an LFO on that as well, just to move it. It's also on the volume. Then we just have a bit of chorus and some echoes to give the sound some space. I have this low pass filter here, which does that little like... So basically you can hear that, it's like kind of going down. And then back up like that. Just gives the pads some movement. You really hear it in the break because when you reveal all these things, like the stabs and the pads just on their own without the drums and the bass line, you need some extra movement in there. If I turn this off, it kind of just feels too flat. It's a subtle thing just to give this overall pad a lot more movement. And then we have some reverb, a bit of drum bus to fatten it up and make it a bit warmer, a high pass filter, and then finally it's being sidechained to the kick. And the second pad is just a saw wave with a bunch of unison and then that low pass filter. This one also has a bit of reverb, and this one has that same low pass that's automated that I just showed you on the first pad, as well as it's being sidechained to the kick. And then we have a high pass filter, which actually just kind of like makes this one disappear. You can see it makes it so it kind of just goes away at the end of all these parts here when it stops. It gets rid of that like low mid-range and just makes it kind of disappear. So next we have these little background sounds, which I'll play these on their own. So basically, this first one here is just this one little one shot that I've taken. This is one of mine. And then you can see we're just playing that little, and then this one is another effect sample, but then you can see it's going through some grain delay here. You can see I have the spray turned up a lot. That's what's creating that like kind of like texture in there. And then I also have this going through some drum bus. So yeah, these are really simple, but they just add some nice kind of flow and movement to the track, you know? It's kind of like, you know, it's an effect sound, but it's also rhythmic. Then we have this little guitar, which you can hear just does that little. Yeah, so this is just in there. This is something that I'm noticing a lot of these tracks, you know, it kind of like plays off of the bass line. My computer loves this project file. Yeah, so you can hear that. Just kind of add some extra little notes there at the beginning of the bass line. It's really subtle, but it's important to have this, because then once we get to the break here, it kind of keeps that rhythm going. If I turn it off, now we're just kind of floating around in space. But having that constant you can hear that just adds that extra little bit of rhythm in there, so it's important. And for this one, I'm just using this guitar patch inside of, I want to say this is tension or collision. I'm not sure exactly, but it's a guitar sound. And then we just have a high pass filter. Really simple. It's just in there for a little bit more groove. Then we have all these stabs. So you can see there's 5 of these. They're all kind of playing off of each other. And that's something that you want to keep in mind right off the bat. Like, before you make any of these, they kind of have to be grooving together. You can't just have, like, you know, a bunch of different random sounds. Like, we're trying to create a groove between these. This, I'm treating this as if it's like its own little percussion section. So most of these are just made using synthesis. However, this first one's made actually using this little sample, which I'll play you the original stab so you can hear it. You can hear it's just like this like organ stab. And then what I've done here is I brought it into a simpler, and we're using a bandpass filter, which you can see we have an envelope on the bandpass, so it's kind of like making it more plucky. But then also you'll notice there's an LFO on the bandpass, so it's being constantly moved around. So you hear this constantly changes and evolves. And that's really important with this. You don't want it to just be the same thing, you know. That little filter modulation just constantly changing is going to make this feel a lot more alive, a lot more exciting, and just more dynamic in general. And then that's going into a bit of echo and reverb to give it some space. I have a drum bus, and then I have a low pass filter here as well, which really just kind of brings us in the intro. You can see, because like they're just kind of subtly bringing that in. And then these other ones here, like I said, are all pretty much just made with different synthesis. Like you can see this first one here, stab 2. That really just plays off of the first stab. That, like that rhythm between those two, that's really what this one's all about. And it's really simple. It's just playing a C-sharp minor chord. Again, that's the key we're in. It's a C-sharp minor, and then C-sharp minor an octave up. And for the sound with this one, it's made with analog, so it's just 2 saw waves, bandpass filter with an envelope, a bit of echo, and reverb, and some drum bus. And yeah, and then this second one here. Which this laptop loves this stab. So what this is this is playing a little bit more complex chord. You can see it is a C sharp minor chord, but then we're adding in this fourth here. So we have our C sharp minor, C sharp, E, and G sharp, and then there's a fourth, which is the F sharp. We also have another C sharp and another E an octave up. So yeah, it's just kind of a more interesting chord voicing. You know, that's how you can differentiate these. Like if you have one like this, where it's still going to be a C sharp minor chord, but then you can hear like that little bit of sort of extra vibe that you're getting just from having that extra voice in there. So for the sound, it's just two saw waves inside a wavetable. Here you can see they're an octave apart. And then I have this low pass filter, which is also being automated. Yeah, you can see they like... So it's opening up with that. But then we also have an LFO on that. So it's two movements. It's the movement of this opening up slowly, but also with doing the quick like that. And the last thing inside of here is we just have a bit of unison. It's on the shimmer setting. Then we have this vocoder. So here's without this. And then with it. So you know, it just gives this a bit more texture. You know, it kind of makes it a bit more interesting sounding. It's a bit like juicier and more full sounding. So I really like how that vocoder sounds. The key to that is you set it to this modulator setting. And then you can see I have the dry wet at like 41%. So we're still getting a lot of the dry signal. But this just kind of like makes things a little bit more interesting sounding. Then we have some echo and some reverb, a bit of drum bus, a high pass filter, and this auto pan just makes it sound like it's being sidechained to the kick. But this way, even in the part without the kick, it still has that kind of like pulsing up thing. Then we have this fourth stab, which this is just going to be a C sharp minor 7 chord. So it's C sharp minor, and then we have a minor 7th on there, which you can see is really just 2 notes down from the root. And yeah, again, just kind of gives it more vibe. This one, as well as the next one I'm going to show you, are less like 16th notes and more meant to just be like that, kind of like fade into the note. So again, like that contrast between the elements that are more bouncy and more like do do do, and then the ones that just go like that. Now for the sound with this one, it's made with analog. So this is going to be, yeah, just 2 saw waves here, detuned a little bit with a low pass filter, which has an LFO on it. So that's how you get that movement. I'm going to the amp envelope set like that, so you can kind of fades into the sound there. There's the LFO. And then we just have a bit of vibrato and unison. And then there's just some reverb, bit more drum bus, high pass filter, pretty standard stuff. And then the last synth stab here is this one. Now all this one is it's another C sharp minor chord, but up here we've added a 9th and then another minor 3rd. So this minor 3rd here you can see is the same note that's right there, just an octave up, and then the 9th 1 note down from that minor 3rd. And you can hear it creates this nice, very like jazzy chord. And this one's just made with operator. It's 3 sine waves at different octaves. You can see there's a lot of attack on there, so that's what's making it kind of fade into the note. And then we just have some chorus and reverb, and a bit of drum bus. And that's really it for that. So yeah, you can see the stabs, pretty simple. You know, they're all pretty similar, but it's just different variations of these same techniques of kind of making things a bit more vibey. And, you know, making it not just like a basic minor chord. Then we have the kick. Which this one, not really a whole lot to say about it. You know, it's just kind of the standard sort of fat, deep, minimal 9/9 kick like I've been showing you guys a lot recently. You know, as I talk about a lot, it's really just about how this one is able to be really fat on its own already, and then we're letting that shine in the mix. We don't need a whole lot of processing. I do have it being converted to mono. Just because sometimes kicks have weird stereo stuff and you want them to be mono. But yeah, it's just a nice fat kick that's going to sit right on top of the mix. Then we have the bass line. So the bass line is probably the most heavy synth being played here. Yeah, you can see it. It's just this bass line in C sharp minor. Again, that's the key we're in. Real simple, but really groovy with the kick. And you'll also notice there's a lot of parts here where like the kick cuts out, but then the bass keeps playing. This is really important to keep the arrangement dynamic, because it's like, if you're making a really minimal track, well, how can you make things more exciting, by taking things in and out, like over here. How we leave the kick. Just little tiny things like that. But that's how we're going to keep a really simple groove like this exciting over the course of the full track. So for the sound on this one, it's made with 2 layers. We have this analog layer, which is just a square wave and a saw wave going into a low pass filter, and then they're being high pass to just make it really just about that low mid-range. This is just adding some kind of nice mid-range and low mid-range to the sound. And then our sub, which is just made with operator. And this is just 2 sine waves doing a tiny bit of FM to each other. And yeah, and then those are just together in an instrument rack. And then we have a bit of drum bus to glue them and make them kind of feel like one bass. We have an EQ8 here, which is cutting out a bit of room for the kick at 100 hertz. And then we just have this being sidechained to the kick. And then on the group of low end, you can see that we actually just have 2 filters here. So you'll see there's the high pass filter, which is being automated throughout the track, like at different times. Yeah, you can see we're even automating the filter frequency. We also have a low pass filter. So that's just for this break here. You see, that's actually on all of the other percussions as well. But yeah, so no group processing, we just have a fat and nice kick and bass that are going to work really well side by side. And then the filters just kind of help to transition the stuff throughout the track. Then we have the clap. There's just 2 layers, just this nice kind of like very punchy clap. And then this one, which has a bit more body to it, and then you put them together. And you get a really fat sounding clap. And then those are just going through, actually that same low pass filter I just showed you, where it just builds it up in the break there. And then we have our percussion. So I'll play this with the claps you can hear. So yeah, you can hear, it's just a bunch of different little sounds here. Just all playing off of each other, creating this little background groove. And it's really just about getting like kind of a diverse palette of sounds. Like we have a snare, we have like this, which is almost tambourine. This, which is like a rim shot, and then this conga. So it's all just a bunch of different sounds that come together. And on the group of those, we have just a little bit of drum bus. And then we have this EQ, which is doing a high pass filter, and then it also has that same low pass automation that you saw going up there. And then we have the hi-hats. So you can see like we have our main hi-hat, which is 2 layers. You put them together and you get the full punchy hi-hat. We have the shakers. Kind of creating their own little pattern. Then we have a live shaker loop just constantly going. And yeah, so the hi-hats are going to be pretty simple. Just kind of filling in the space that isn't already being filled in with all that percussion. And on those, we just have that same low pass filter. Now, I'll talk to you about why we use an EQ for this. It's very simple. If you look at Ableton's auto filter, it's very good, but you notice the sweep only goes up to 19.9 kilohertz. And technically, you can hear up to 20 kilohertz. So we want to preserve that high end. And if you look, the frequency on the EQ actually goes all the way up to 22 kilohertz. Now, it might not seem like that big of a deal, but I'll show you the difference. So here is the hi-hats you can see in the spectrum with the EQ8. And then here's with the auto filter. So you'll notice that some of that high end actually does get cut off by the auto filter. And so that's why we use an EQ. It's just because it's a little bit cleaner and it's not going to cut off that low end or that high end. And yeah, then the last thing down here is just this live percussion. Just like some nice live percussion in there to kind of make it feel a little bit less rigid and a little bit more lively. Like if I play the whole mix without this, it's good, but then when we turn it on, you definitely want to make sure you have something live and more kind of like realistic like this. And this is just being compressed a little bit to kind of make them all more even. I have a high pass filter and then the same EQ8 just building up in the breakdown. And then the last thing down here is this little snare. Just doing that. Also this one. So yeah, it's the same snare actually that's inside of this group. It's that one. But this one's just doing a few little extra fills here and there, kind of makes it a bit more exciting. It's a way to do a transition without having a big, like sweeping riser or something, it's just a little tiny thing. To transition you over to that next part. And yeah, so that is going to be it for this one, guys. That is how you make a full track in the style. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets. Everything that you saw from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. The full track arrangement, so you can really get this and use it as a template to make your own tracks. If you're stuck, here it is. This is what you might need to move forward. Plus, you can also just get some really great inspiration. And on top of that, it really helps to support me. Every single sale of these helps me keep going so I can keep bringing you guys new videos every single day. I don't make a whole lot just off of YouTube. But with these, I'm able to keep going and keep bringing you guys new techniques and new stuff like this that isn't out there on YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow with another video.